السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعزائي طلاب وطالبات الصف الثالث الثانوي دفعة 2023-2024 يونت 1 كتاب ميسير مستر فيصل محمد أبو ناب Reading and Listening Texts. نصوص القراءة والاستماع بتبدأ من صفحة 29 إلى صفحة 36 from 29 to 36. نبدأ إن شاء الله تعالى.
Reading and listening texts. Listening text. 1. A student reporter is interviewing a journalist. Reporter: how did you get into journalism? Journalist: I started as a trainee on a local newspaper and then I started a 3-year apprenticeship. I've written for many newspapers since that time. Reporter: what advice can you give a student reporter like me? Journalist: learn from your mistakes. When I was first interviewing people, I was asking too many questions. Let the person talk and always listen very carefully. Give both sides of the story and make sure any facts or quotes are accurate. When I first wrote news stories, I often included my own feelings and opinions. This was not good. If you're writing a news story, try to be objective. Show your reporter: have you ever interviewed anyone famous? Journalist: I've interviewed lots of celebrities. Reporter: who was the most annoying person you've interviewed? Journalist: there was one grumpy person that I remember. I was interviewing a well-known actor when he told me to be quiet. The actor didn't want to answer my questions. Reporter: is it a hard job? Journalist: it can be. Sometimes I wonder why I'm tired, and I remember that I've worked for 12 hours without a break. But journalists usually love what they do. Reporter: what kind of person does a good journalist have to be? Journalist: you obviously have to be good at writing, but you also have to be a naturally nosy person and you really need to be interested in people. I've worked with a lot of journalists and the best ones have these 3 qualities. Reporter: what advice would you give to young people listening who want to become journalists? Journalist: get some experience on the school newspaper or work for a local newspaper for free. And don't give up. Keep trying until someone gives you a chance. I was working as a volunteer at a shop while I was at university. And I applied for 18 jobs before I got my first paid job 12 years later. I'm still here. Reading. New Harry Potter book shown online. photographs of all 784 pages of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows have appeared on the internet 4 days before J.K. Rowling's final book is due to be published. It is not known who took the photographs of the book, whose contents have been kept a secret before the book is published at 12:01 am Saturday. Some websites have removed the photos after receiving warnings from the publisher's lawyers, but photos of the book can still be read on other sites. It is also claimed that some people were typing up copies from the photos to share on social media. This all occurred despite the careful security which has been put in place before the book is published. This included asking the booksellers not to tell the media when or if they had copies of the book. The incident highlights the problems of online book piracy, which is becoming much more common. Internet cheat ruins Potter surprise. Just 4 days before J.K. Rowling's final book about Harry Potter is published, an internet cheat has shared every page of the book online. This has ruined the surprise for millions of readers, who have been waiting with bated breath to find out what happens to the famous character. Several websites show photographs of every page of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, which means that you can read the whole book online, including the long-awaited ending. Lawyers have demanded that the website stop showing the illegal photos and, fortunately, some websites have agreed. However, other people have typed up the text from the photos and likely to share the story on other websites. Fans of Harry Potter were shocked by the news. "It's terrible," says Kate Strong from Cambridge, who plans to buy the new book for her children. "The person who has done this should be put in prison." Ever Given blocks Suez Canal, March 2021. Rescuers have finally moved a huge ship which was blocking traffic going through the Suez Canal. The ship, called the Ever Given, is 400 meters long and weighs 200,000 tons. It is one of the largest of this type of ship in the world. The ship was traveling through the Suez Canal on March 23 when there was a sandstorm. The ship's captain said that a strong wind spun the ship so that both its front and back hit the sides of the canal. The result was that no ships could travel past the ship for nearly a week. Yesterday, more than 380 ships were waiting to pass through the canal. Many ship companies wanted to know if there was another route. A few of the ship's captains decided to go around the south of Africa instead, but this added about 8 days to their journeys. At the same time, Some countries announced that they would send products by air, but this is about 3 times more expensive as sending it by ship. The accident was terrible for businesses around the world. That is because around 12% of the world's business products pass through the canal each day, so the accident cost both Egypt and the other countries millions of dollars. Luckily, smaller Egyptian boats finally were able to move the Ever Given yesterday. They did an amazing job. They moved around 30,000 square meters of sand under the ship before they took the ship to the Great Bitter Lakes, in the middle of the canal. The canal authorities told us that they won't know the true cause of the accident until they investigate. Although the canal is open for ships again today, traffic through the canal won't return to normal for many days. Experts are investigating the possible casualties for all sides. They are also studying the accident carefully to see how Egypt can be compensated financially. Piracy is a crime. In recent, a new former Danish student in her late 20s was punished for selling pirated digital copies of textbooks. The criminal lawyer made it clear that copying e-books without the permission of the author is a crime. The criminal lawyer stated that the convict has now received a punishment for violating copyright law. He also said that it is important to understand that even though it is easy to do so, it is a crime to copy e-books without the permission of the author. When asked to give a reason why she sold books that she does not own the rights to, the student said she was helping students obtain books at a lower price. It was made clear to her that copying e-books that one does not own the rights to is illegal. In addition to being punished by law, she is also required to pay a large sum of money for the crime of piracy. Punished for stealing books. An international crime court in Denmark punished a 20-year-old student for selling pirated digital copies of textbooks. The student said she was only trying to help others buy cheaper books. The student was punished and required to pay a large sum of money for her crime. Her crimes were referred to the country's International Crime Court. Manal, Mom, Saha has broken the computer. It's not working. Saha, I didn't break it. Manal, but you used it last. Saha, yes, but it was already broken when I tried to use it. Mom, sorry girls, I forgot to say that it broke yesterday. Dad, that computer is always breaking. We need a new one. Social media has a negative impact on news and society. Social media has become the main source of news. These days 68% of people who have internet access get their news from social media. Although this means that we can find news easily and get regular updates on our phones, in my view I think that social media has a negative impact on news and society. To begin with, this constant cycle of news, which is mostly bad, can make people stressed and worried. A recent survey found that more than half of Americans say they get anxious and sleep badly because of the news. Next, not everything we read or see on social media is true or legal. If we share it before checking the facts, we might spread false information. In turn, this means that the public will stop trusting journalists. In addition, piracy is very common on social media. It is very easy to copy books, films, and music and to share them, but this means that the people who wrote the books or made the films and music don't get any money for their work. Lastly, social media starts to control what news we see and don't see. Our social media friends become the managing editors. They share news stories they like and agree with, so the news we see is not balanced or objective. In summary, whilst it is a good thing that we have so much news available and it is easy to keep up to date with current affairs, we need to avoid the negative effects. It's important to be careful about where we get our news and how often we check it. We also have a social responsibility to make every effort not to spread inaccurate or misleading news and not to copy artistic content without permission. Millions to be spent on project that will make our traffic worse. Car drivers are angry about plans to open a new bus lane from the city center. The plan, which will cost $200 million, will stop all cars using Yellow Road, one of the most important roads into the city. Traffic in the city is already terrible, says businesswoman Mrs. Joan Bates. If they close Yellow Road, it will be even worse. Another business person who uses South Road regularly, Mr. Jason Shelley, says, "Why are they planning to close roads? With so many cars in the city, they need to build new ones. No one wants to take buses because they are too slow. Be new route to serve university. There are plans for a new bus lane from the city center to the university. The $200 million project will mean closing Yellow Road to cars, but will make the journey by bus 30 minutes faster." The organizers believe the project will help attract students to the university and that the electric buses will also reduce pollution. The bus lane will also be used by bikes and taxis. The project is part of a long-term plan to persuade people to use public transport rather than driving, to help reduce traffic and air pollution. 12. Bias. Tarek loves a football team called the Greens. He writes reports on their matches online, but the reports do not give a balanced point of view. He always puts the Greens report at the top of the page when they win, but not when they lose. This is bias by placement. He always puts a spin on his stories, too. For example, when the Greens lose, it is because they did not have their best players. However, he does not report the fact that the other team did not have their best players when the Greens win. This is bias by omission. Nevertheless, Tarek's reports are not inaccurate. He does not want to mislead you, and the reports tell you what really happened in the match. After all, he cannot change the result. Talk about media bias. So, moving on, what exactly is bias? First of all, let's look at bias by omission. This means leaving something out, for example, a fact or a quote which maybe doesn't support the writer's point of view. Let's look at some examples. Imagine Heba over here every morning checks the same website to read the news. She likes the way the articles are written and feels that she is getting good information, but one day her friend Marwa over here recommends a different news site. When Heba looks at this, she sees completely different news stories with a very different point of view. Let's say that on Heba's website, there is a big story about how angry people are that a local factory is about to close. Marwa's website has the same story, but it doesn't mention that anyone is angry. The writer has omitted this information to make us feel differently about the story. The second type of bias might be placement. On Heba's website, the story is at the top of the page with a big photo and large text. This gives the impression that it is an important story. But on Marwa's website, the story is very short on the third page and very low down on the page where people might not see it. The third type of bias is spin. The writer tries to make the reader feel the same way they do about a topic and doesn't present a balanced point of view. They do this by choosing certain words. For example, argued the factory manager instead of agreed the factory manager. Secondly, they choose to include certain information and leave other information out. Thirdly, they give only one point of view. In our example, the journalist gives the reaction of the staff in the factory but not the managers. It misleads the reader into thinking it is a bad thing. On the other hand, in Marwa's story, it is presented as a good thing. It mentions that there is a lot of pollution caused by the factory. The journalist in this case is trying to. We still need guidebooks because we cannot rely on the opinion of people online. With today's social media, it is possible to find online reviews of everything from a local park or cafe to a famous restaurant or museum. Before you book a holiday, you can read what other people think of a hotel or car hire company and what they recommend you do when you get there. Although this means you can get information very easily, in my view, this is not as useful information as you can get from a guidebook. To begin with, we need to ask ourselves why people write reviews online. Whilst it is sometimes because people like writing their opinions, at other times they have a reason for writing it. Perhaps they know the owners of the cafe, or perhaps they are the owners of the cafe. That is why they give it a good review. Secondly, who are the people writing the reviews? It is difficult to know this information. If they are 50-year-old Europeans, will they have the same opinion as you? It is very hard to know if you are going to like the same places that they like. Lastly, we need to remember that guidebook writers are usually experts. You can trust them for accurate information and a balanced point of view. They also know who is using their books. So if the book is intended to be for young people, they will recommend places that young people will like. To conclude, online reviews are useful, but it's important to remember that they are just people's opinions. If you want to know what experts think, personally, I think you should buy a guidebook.
مع تمنياتي لكم بالنجاح والتوفيق، وإلى اللقاء في الفيديو القادم إن شاء الله تعالى. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.